Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today is Thanksgiving week. It's Monday, November the 19th. And, I've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails saying, where have you been? You haven't been around in a while. Well, we actually have been around, but it has been 5 weeks since we taped the last shows, which were the live debates, and the state senate debate and the governor's council debate. And so it's actually been about 4 weeks, pretty close to 4 weeks, since you actually saw a new show airing on BCTV. But we haven't been lazy. We kind of needed a break because from July to that mid-October date, we actually did 41 shows, believe it or not. And the lion's share of them were with the candidates in this year's election, but we did do the 3 live debates. We did 3 on the state income tax constitutional question. We had Congressman Frank Ginta, Congressman Charlie Bass, House Speaker Bill O'Brien, and then we had some local luminaries, our police chief, John Brafonsky, as well as our brand new town manager, Jessie Levine. So we were pretty busy. Got a lot of response, and I want to say this to you, if it seems like it was a long time between shows, it really wasn't. Any of you who have done a show know that there's a lot of time beyond the actual in front of the camera time. Every show, some of them take hours worth of research to get the material together and learn about the issue and such, others not so long. But the actual taping is the smallest part of it. There's all the advance time, but then there's all the after time, because when this show is all taped today, then my phenomenal cinematographer and director, Mike Currier, takes over and gets it ready for what you will actually see on BCTV. So multiply 41 by all those hours, and that was a whole lot of hours between July and October. And quite frankly, by the time we got done with the live debates, we did need a little bit of a break. And then there was another little unforeseen situation that required a break as well. So put it all together, and we had these past 4 weeks off. But I am happy to say we're back, we're ready to rock and roll, and it is going to be busy. A lot of you were very complimentary, and I thank you for that, about the candidate shows. And a lot of you said that you were happy to see that they weren't confrontational, that candidates were treated equally and fairly and all given an equal opportunity to state their views. And I will tell you, I really worked hard for that part of it. I know on other shows we've done, especially on local issues, some of them got controversial and some of them I was pretty outspoken, and sometimes I got people very angry, which is fine. But the candidate shows were meant to be an educational series. So I'm glad that you recognized that and recognized that we really did make every possible effort to make them fair. I do have to admit this, though. Sometimes it was not easy. Sometimes there would be a candidate sitting there saying something, and I would so much want to say, "Are you kidding me?" and couldn't do it because we were trying to keep it fair. But just so you know, we did work hard at it. So again, thank you for the compliments on that. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions because of the fact we were off the air for just a short time, a month. One of them was, are we ending the show? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We have many, many shows. My goal is to have a couple of hundred of them taped by the end of 2013. Are we going to focus on Bedford issues again, where we've done so many shows now over the past couple of months that it really didn't have anything to do with Bedford specifically? The answer to that is yes. It started out as a show on Bedford issues. It will continue on as a show on Bedford issues, and maybe now and then they'll get controversial. Maybe now and then some of you will get angry at what you hear, but that's fine because that's what discussion should be about. We won't limit ourselves to Bedford issues. In fact, we have a whole bunch of really neat shows planned on a lot of good subjects, some of them extremely topical, and a lot of new guests that I think some will surprise you. And some of them are very well known and very fascinating, so I think we'll put together some really good shows for you. There will be a couple of changes that we'll be announcing, and one of them that's very major is that we're going to be trying to get these shows to you faster. The way that it's structured now is when we tape a show, the way that the BCTV scheduling, runs is that it's almost 2 weeks before it gets on the air. Now, if it's just a talk show on a particular subject, that really doesn't matter. But if it's a show on a subject that is very timely and that may require citizen input or may require people showing up at a hearing or whatever, 2 weeks is too long. So our methodology from here on in is these shows will get taped and they'll immediately be available to you within sometimes hours, because we're going to be utilizing YouTube more and more and getting those shows up long before you'll ever have to turn on BCTV to watch them. And we'll do everything we can to let you know about that. There is a new website under development that will make announcements. I certainly will be blogging on Patch every time a new show is available for you to see. For those of you who don't check into Patch, I encourage it. It's a great local resource. Just go to www.bedford-nh.patch.com. And it won't be just my stuff that's on there, obviously. There's everything you can think of in the community showing up on Patch, and it's something you can contribute to as well. So a little pitch for Patch. Start watching it and you'll get our news quickly. And what we're trying to do also is to figure out a way to get news to you folks who don't use computers, because I know there are residents in town who don't. So we're working on it. We'll figure out something. It would be nice if the local newspapers put in every press release we send, but they don't. Don't understand it, but they don't. But we'll figure out something. So anyway, having said all that, thanks for being with us through all this time. And at the risk of boring you to death, this is, I think, our 68th show today. So we're making milestones, and we'll soon bump that up to 100 before you even know it. Now, back in August, actually on August 18th, we had a show called Meet the New Boss. And the new boss was none other than our new town manager, Jessie Levine, who was so great. I mean, she actually came on to this show kind of having no idea where it would go or what kind of questions would be thrown at her or anything else. And she hadn't even actually started the job yet. She was still a couple of weeks out. And we had a great discussion. Hopefully all of you saw that show. If you did not, it is on YouTube. It is on the BCTV website. If you don't know how to get to either, shoot me an email. My email address is at the end, and I'll tell you how to watch it. Because it was a great introduction to it, told us a lot about her background and kind of the ideas that she had in her head at that point for Bedford. Well, here we are, and she's been on the job, I don't know, 10 weeks, thereabouts, and has already made her mark in town. So did it not seem like a great idea to give her a call and say, Jessie, how would you like to come back on? Because now all kinds of things are happening. She's immersed in town. So I am very pleased to say my guest today is Jessie Levine, our Bedford Town Manager. Jessie, thanks so much for being the first guest on the first show back.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Kathy.
And what is it? Is it 10 weeks?
Roughly, yeah, I think so. 11 maybe, entering my 11th.
Wow,
But
well, time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun,
And
absolutely.
I also have to congratulate you because you are now an official resident.
I am.
I
moved in the weekend before the elections. I registered to vote on election day and voted in Bedford.
So you're totally official.
I am. Yeah,
Wow.
it's great to be here.
What's been your biggest surprise moving here?
Moving here,
Yeah.
it's funny to be so close to town hall yet to have to get in my car, and so I'm getting used to a community where people spend a lot of time in their cars.
Yes.
And you know, if I could identify one thing that I'd like to work on, it would be to expand the walkability of Bedford. I've also been surprised that it's the biggest community I've worked in, yet in many ways it's got the same issues as smaller communities. So towns face similar problems and challenges in New Hampshire, and whether it's a town of 22,000 or 12,000 or 4,500, a lot of what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is similar. So I'm surprised by both the largeness and the smallness of Bedford.
What do you like best so far?
Oh gosh, I would say I love everybody I've met has really wanted to get engaged and has been supportive, whether it's whether it's an elected official or an employee or a member of the citizenry who says, oh, I saw you on TV and great, welcome. How do I participate? How do I get involved? Everybody seems very engaged, and I like that.
And you've been bopping around town to events and things.
Somewhat, I have.
I've seen you at a couple of them. Yes.
Have you? Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get out, and I think right now I'm still trying to sell my house in Springfield, so I've spent some time north on the weekends, but I have been trying to participate in local events and be a member of the community, and slowly but surely that will happen.
Oh yeah, it doesn't take long in this town, because we are small enough that kind of you do get to see the same people at a lot of the events.
And looking at the schedule there, I could do something every day.
It's true, between everything.
A lot
between all the different meetings and social events and so on.
Yes.
And you've even been following the local football team, I hear, too.
I have. I was really disappointed that I couldn't attend the semifinal game in person. I ended up with a stomach bug that day, but I did watch it on BCTV.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by the production. I mean, we do a great job, our sports folks, and then also the game itself, and then had also hoped to get to the finals but didn't make it. That was a disappointing loss.
Well, yeah, but when you think of how far they came,
that's
just a short amount of years. I mean, it's a new high school.
It's pretty amazing.
50th this year? 4th or 50th? I forget. So, I mean, it is amazing.
It is. It is.
So, you're all over the place.
I'm following. I'm trying.
Anything you don't like yet?
No, not at all.
Not even the traffic or anything?
No, I have managed, because I come in early and leave, I've managed to miss the traffic, and my dog's
feeling you're the first one in, unlocking the door, and the last one to leave.
It depends on the day.
Yeah, I'll bet on most days.
Yeah, it depends on the day. I mean, we open early on Tuesdays, so often I get here after staff. This morning I was here after some of the staff, so it depends on the day.
Yeah.
And it depends on, energy levels and what's going on in town.
Well, that's true too, yeah, because I mean, you're doing a lot of night work too.
Right, yeah.
Which, that can add up, especially when you were still commuting.
Oh, but the 6-minute commute.
If run 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then by the time you get home and everything, it's crazy.
No, but I cannot complain about a 6-minute commute.
6 minutes
wonderful.
Is not bad.
It is great. It's great. I've never had one that short.
Especially in the winter.
I'll take it.
Then you'll like it.
That's right. I know. Hopefully
and the good weather, maybe you can, walk with the dog.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, I'm not going to bring her to work most likely, but yeah.
Why
not? Because she's got a little bit of energy. She wouldn't sit well for hours at a time. I wouldn't wish her on anybody.
Well, I will admit I have tried to watch the council meetings ever since you've been on. And I should say, as well as the budget workshops and so on. But I think I did say to you in an email, and I should be embarrassed about this, but I gotta tell you, I mean, some of those council meetings, I start out with vim and vigor watching them, and then I fall asleep.
Did they go
and I wake up like 90 minutes later and they're still talking. So it's like, okay, what did I miss?
That's right. That's right.
And, I give you a lot of credit for being able to sit through. I'm glad we can be
part of your sleep therapy. I mean, whatever we can do to help.
It is working. That's a good idea. A sleepless night, go down, put the TV on and watch one of the old tapes.
That's right. There you go.
But they seem like they've been pretty calm, and the council seems to have been behaving themselves overall.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say that's a great way to start, to be able to have meetings that are conversational and educational. And I mean, I'm sure we will have our controversy at some point in the, in my tenure here. But it's nice to have a council where you can talk through issues. And sorry if it gets a little slow and boring, but at least we're analyzing everything we need to.
That's my shortfall. My attention span. If you don't get fiery, I start getting dozed. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and we'll have our public hearings on the budget in January after doing our work sessions this fall, and so I'm sure there will be some more input and conversation when those happen.
Yeah, usually a few people will show up for those.
Great. I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
You can almost, if you've watched some of the old ones, which I'm sure you have, you probably already know some of the cast that will show up and carry on about one thing or another.
Good. That's what I want people to do, is to be involved.
Yeah, the more input, the better.
Right.
Well, since you brought up the budget, I have been following that.
Good.
And of course, I did go online and, read all the stuff that I missed during the talking portion of the meetings because I wasn't paying attention. And obviously, and I think everybody understands, there is there is definitely going to be a budget increase this year, and there definitely will be a tax increase this year. And I made some notes, and hopefully nothing has changed since when I made the notes, and I'm sure you'll correct me.
We haven't made any changes to the budget yet, so
Okay.
I think those most likely will happen on December 5th is the council work session between the department presentations and the public hearing. So that's most likely when any changes will occur, if they do.
Okay, so I do know that obviously it is, we're looking at a 2.3% increase over 2012. So we're jumping from 21.9 roughly, I mean a little more than that obviously, to 24,310.
Right, the budget, yep.
So I know that this represents a 10-cent increase, you know, for the general operating budget. But I think a lot of people don't really realize that the total increase, as we at least know it right now, and again, we have no idea what the school factor will kick in to be, or if the county is going to increase. But the total town one sounds pretty horrible when you say 40 cents.
It does.
And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to do another show with you, because I said that in an email to you. I mean, obviously people hear increase, and a lot of people will get worked up. Some people won't, but some people will. And when they hear 40 cents, the first thing they're going to do, some of them will start howling about not just the council, but the town manager, going, what? What are they doing? And which is why I wanted to have you on to talk about it, because I think what people really have to understand is that 30 cents of that you're totally inheriting. You had nothing to say about it, no input from you. You knew when you took the job, so this is going to be one of the burdens on my back when I come in. So do you, you know, I did notes on it, but I'd rather have you explain it because you're the guest and people want to hear what you have to say. So do you want to talk about that 30-cent part of it first, so people understand?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Obviously the budget is one of the most important components of my job and of what the town does. I mean, it's how we run our operations is through the budget. And so it's the most important thing to talk about, especially at this time of year. So yes, right out of the gate, unless we cut some level of service to offset it, we have a 30-cent increase, and that is the result of three primary things. The biggest chunk of that, about $650,000, is our first payment on the infrastructure bond that voters approved in 2011. So, and I'm sure at that time, although I wasn't here, that there was a projection about what the impact would be, and that infrastructure bond has enabled us to do the major road projects that you've seen in town, Meeting House Road, Donald Street, the Jenkins Road Bridge, a number of our overlay projects. So that was basically added to our regular road maintenance budget. It also is allowing us to look at our town facilities, to talk about the fire substation on South River Road. So that was approved by voters in 2011. The town of Bedford. And you do need
to remind them of that,
obviously. And that's a big hit on the budget. Next year, one of our older bonds will be paid off, and so the plan is to continue to, well, we've only sold about half of the infrastructure bond so far. The voters approved $13 million. We put $6 million out for sale, and so we've got the remainder of that. And so next year, when we have a major bond payoff, we will be implementing the second phase of that, so it'll hopefully be a wash in the budget. That's not to say there's not an impact, but one of the things, Bedford is the only AAA rated town in the state. So we have a phenomenal financial experience and financial rating. And one of the reasons for that is that we manage our borrowing very carefully. So we pay off our bonds in 10 years. And because of that, the annual payments of principal and interest are higher, but over time we'll pay less interest than if we dragged it out for 20 or 30 years. So we're aggressive on that front. We also, because of our bond rating, we have our borrowing rate is under 2%. So that isn't, I mean, now's the time to do any of these big projects when money
now,
is that cheap.
how does that compare to like other towns?
Well, we just comparing it to ourselves, we have bonds that we're still paying off that have upwards of 4%. And other towns through the bond bank, I mean, this is a good time to borrow money, but we're still,
we're talking millions,
it is. I mean, I mean, we save significant amount of money. So that's a big part of the 30-cent increase. The the other part, the state retirement system, of which we are members by statute, and we really cannot extract ourselves from, they pass down roughly a 25% rate increase, and that
to the horror of every city,
to the horror of every city, town, school district, counties. I mean, any member, even the state itself, will see that increase. So that affects all of our public employees, and that is just under $150,000 for half of a year. Bedford, we budget on a January to December fiscal year. Currently, this rate increase goes into effect July 1st, so we only see it for part of our first year, and then subsequently we'll see it. So next year it'll be bigger, and the school district, which budgets July to June, will see it for its full year. But they haven't not begun their budget process yet, so we don't know what the full impact of that is. But for us, it was $150,000.
And isn't it supposed to be like, I don't know, 600 or something for the school? Or
I think that's that's the estimate, right?
650, I guess, right?
Right. I think that's the annual estimate. Yep. And then the other component is our obligations under previous collective bargaining agreements to employees in our labor unions. That is something that was agreed to by previous town councils, voted on in previous budgets, and then that automatically
police,
drives
fire, and public works.
Right,
correct?
and that drives some of the increases, their wage increases, and then their share of health insurance increases. So that's what's in that first 30 cents of the budget. And now some would argue, and I'm sure they will at public hearings, and it's valid, that when you have a cost increase, you should lower your other expenses to offset it. I agree to some extent, but that when we lower costs, when we lower our budget, that's services, and I don't yet have a handle on what services the town of Bedford would live without to offset, almost $800,000, $1 million in cost increases. That's a significant. I mean, that's our entire road maintenance budget. That's that's 10 police officers. That's a lot of money to try to offset.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So that's the first 30 cents. The second 10 or the last 10 cents of the budget, which I would say is under my control, or under my recommendation at least. I've recommended the addition of 3 new staff, and that's probably going to be the biggest discussion with council, especially as staff costs increase, retirement system, health insurance. I've recommended that we add a planning assistant. Bedford is one of the only planning departments in the state without a full-time assistant dedicated to that department, and it's put some stress on our professionals and our ability to be productive and really serve the public.
I did hear the planning director when he addressed you and the council that night. Yeah.
And then the second position is an additional police officer, and I think Chief Brofonsky will make a very good case for how the shortage of staff affects our response and prevention of crime. He's also asked for a half-time administrative position, which is a position that existed full-time in the past, and then when it became vacant, it was eliminated. And again, it's caused us to use our highly paid, more experienced staff to do some administrative work that could be better handled. And then the third is a buildings and grounds superintendent position. The town of Bedford has never had somebody dedicated full-time to the management of our facilities. We've had full-time facilities maintenance staff, but we haven't had somebody whose primary job is to manage how we handle our facilities and look long range for our capital expenses. So those are the 3.5 positions. And then we also had a 15%, just under 15% health insurance increase, and that's in my budget as well. So that's really the bulk of the
Now, is that across the board? Does that include the union employees too?
It does. That's a premium increase. Okay. Right. Okay. And then also in my budget is a request for $147,000 for non-union staff merit increases. And Bedford does not have a history of doing cost of living adjustments. This would be a merit-based raises. And part of that conversation is because our union raises are set by contract, they go up at a certain level every year, where our non-union raises are managed by the manager and town council, and they've increased at a lower rate. So we have a couple of situations.
When was the last time they got a raise?
They did, there was a 2% average merit increase in last year's budget.
Okay.
But the problem is that our non-union staff are rising at a lower rate than our union staff, which is causing compression where we have some non-union supervisory positions and union subordinate positions, and some of those union positions are surpassing their supervisors. So it's disincentivizing people from taking or going after promotions, and it's also in some ways suggesting that it might be more attractive to be in a union than not in a union, and we'd really like to.
Yeah, that's a point.
Yeah, so that's my budget, and that's really, as some of the papers have reported, part of the reason that I've included those staff positions is to have a conversation about our staffing levels with the council. I can have the conversation as manager with my staff, but if it doesn't get brought to the council, then it's never discussed in a public forum, and I think some of those conversations should take place in a public forum, and perhaps controversy will engage more people in the discussion about our budget. Now, I do want to remind everybody that we're talking about less than 25% of the tax dollar. We're talking about Bedford's tax dollar is largely school and state school and county. The town budget is less than 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
So we have to often right.
Yeah.
I think it gets blown out of proportion.
Well,
to
yeah.
the total
Yeah,
context.
because I know the printouts you gave. Where the heck is it here? I did write them down someplace. The printouts you gave to the council, and you probably know this without me even looking for it. Knowing you have this all down totally in your head. But yeah, people do not realize that. I mean, sincerely, the lion's share of our taxes is to fund the school department.
Right.
The town portion is kind of
Is a
small
smaller
in
share.
comparison.
Right.
The county, of course, is small. But is the
Right.
county, is that likely to change? Do we know?
I have not heard anything about the county budget.
When do they set theirs? I don't
They
even know.
are really in December is when we
So
get
right
there.
around now?
Yep. We should
Yeah,
start
and
hearing
I
soon.
honestly don't know if the past couple of years, I don't think they've had increases.
I have not
they?
really
I
heard.
think they've tried to hold
Yeah,
it somewhat.
and Bedford, in context, having been in New London and then Hanover, Bedford, for being a larger community, the actual amount sent to the county is pretty similar in sheer dollar amount to what New London pays to Merrimack County and what Hanover paid to Grafton County. So I think that's a function of being, even though we are a large community, we are smaller than some of the other towns and cities in our county. So we actually benefit in terms of the county budget.
I did find that. So last year, on our tax rate of $430, the town tax rate was $435. The schools were $14.83.
Right.
So,
and some of that, of course, is the state
and the
school.
county was $1.14.
Right.
So, we add up to $20.32 per thousand.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you look at that, out of the 2032, $14.83 was the schools.
Right, and under, like I said, under 25% is the amount that we're talking about. It sounds like $22 million, $24 million is of course a lot of money,
Well, yeah,
but
of course.
in terms of the
But that's
total
everything.
tax dollar,
Yeah.
it's a smaller portion of the tax dollar. And Bedford has one of the best school districts in the state. So I mean, that's another conversation that it's not my
I know.
area of
I know.
expertise. But.
Are you hearing any rumors out of there? Because obviously now they're going to be facing the added pension costs passed down by the state. And I guess this year there'll be teacher negotiations going on again, because what we approved at the last, for this year was only a one-year contract. So I don't know if they're coming in for a pay raise or not.
I know nothing.
So no,
I confess complete ignorance to the school. Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I think they're in their process now of reviewing everything.
Yeah,
too.
I think their budget, because they're 6 months behind us, their budget is just getting underway.
I mean, frankly, personally, I'd be surprised if they're not looking for more money. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that. And Tim Mays, if you're listening, I'm really not trying to start trouble here.
I plead complete ignorance on the school budget until I can start watching it on. Now that I have cable, which I didn't have for my first 10 days or so.
Well, yeah. I mean, you moved in when we were going through the hurricane.
I moved in right before the hurricane, and
I know
of course Comcast had other priorities to hooking me up with cable.
Yeah, because I was wondering if you no sooner move in and your power would be out, and it would be like, oh my God.
Yeah, no. I did. I'm right on the Manchester line, and
You were
we
lucky.
seem to survive. Right.
Yeah, because I don't think a
was
lot
very
of town got knocked out, but some
We
portions did, huh?
we had a good, at least 20% of
there
the
was
town
that
was
much?
out for a while. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
We didn't this time. We had a few flickers, but we hung in.
Yeah,
I
I think
wasn't sure
the-
how the rest of the town made out.
The last of the power, I think, was restored Thursday evening.
Oh, okay.
So it was,
long enough.
it was, people felt it for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Frustration
Miserable.
levels
Yeah, I'd be
grew.
glad you weren't around last year.
I know. We had our own fair
Oh,
share
I know,
up
up there. Yeah, you had it worse than we
That's
did,
right,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, one of the things that, and I think, I don't know that people totally understand, so I just want to bring it up, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. And again, this might be one of those troublemaking questions, I'm not sure. The town budget is what it is, but then, you add another couple of million to it, and I should have numbered my cards so it'd be more
I should have brought my budget
on
binder.
top of things. But obviously, that budget is increased overall by the fact that we have the other funds coming in that don't impact the taxpayers.
Right, correct.
Basically, money in, money back out again. That we're not paying
enterprise
for.
funds.
The enterprise,
right. We
yeah,
do
for
have
the
a couple of
sewer and
the sewer BCTV is an
BCTV,
enterprise
right.
fund. Yes.
And police
Recreation,
details. And
yep.
what is it? Day camp, I guess, right?
Right. Recreation
Right.
day camp.
So that comes to roughly over 2 million, is it?
Yeah, and so
About 2.2,
those
something like that.
Like you said, those are funds that they are part of the overall budget that
Right.
has to go to town meeting for approval, but they are offset by their own fees.
Okay,
So
so
that's-
here's my troublemaking question. Of that money, how much? I mean, I know legally there's requirements, like for instance with the Comcast money that comes in, that pays for BCTV and
Right.
such. But how much can the town say, okay, we are going to take this? I mean, I know there's a percentage.
It depends. The only funds that we take, if that's the
Right.
term, is to cover our own administrative costs in administering those funds. So BCTV is an enterprise fund. It pays for the operations of BCTV.
Right.
But the employees, or actually the sole employee of BCTV, receives health benefits that are managed by the town.
By
So
the
to the
town,
extent
right.
that there's an interaction between the town and the enterprise fund, that's really the charge back against the fund. So it's not, if it's an automatic percentage, I don't know what that is, but it does relate. We can't just we can't just pluck a sum out of there. It has to relate to the actual cost of administering the
Right,
funds.
yeah,
So
I understand that.
I can't
'cause
tell you more
in fact, I
specifically.
finally found that card that the total town budget is 26,263,131.
Right, so it's,
And of that, it's pretty close to 2 million
Mm-hmm.
in the proprietary funds, 1,952,710. So I guess what I'm asking is, can any of that money, and I do understand the BCTV, what you just explained about the insurance and so on. I don't know about the sewer police detail and day camp, but my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is a percentage, for example, of the BCTV funds that could be taken to be put into the general funds of the town.
okay, I think you're talking about the franchise fee itself.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. So that's different from the town just charging an administrative fee against the BCTV
Yes, yeah,
budget.
exactly,
Yes.
yeah.
The council could, in any town that receives a franchise fee, the council could say a percentage of that should go into the general fund instead of to operating the BCTV. Absolutely. Any
Do you
town
happen
has
to
the
know
ability
how much
to do that.
that would be?
I think it's up to the town. I mean, it's the franchise
is there a
fees.
limit? I mean, like you could only
Well,
take,
there's a
for
li-
instance, 3%, or you could take 10%.
There's a limit to
or-
franchise fees. Period. Franchise fees can be no more than 5%.
Okay.
And the franchise fee, just for listeners, is what Comcast pays to the town in exchange for the ability to have a franchise
Right.
where it can offer cable,
And
that's limited to
sum.
5%.
That's like what, 350,
you know what, I can't
360?
even-
I think it's like
I can't even tell you what it is in
It's about
Bedford.
it's over 350,000.
Well, and
There you
there's,
go.
it's an interesting argument because not every Bedford resident subscribes
Exactly.
to Comcast. So
Yeah.
should any percentage of the franchise fee go against the general fund, which would benefit all taxpayers and not just those that actually are paying for the service. Because, mind you, any cable company, Comcast or anybody else who is charged a franchise fee, that's covered. That goes into the cost of the subscription for the cable subscribers. So should the town taxpayer end up getting a benefit from something that a smaller subsection of taxpayers is actually paying for, that's really where the question lies. And in Bedford, those franchise fees are put back into BCTV, which benefits only the people who actually have a subscription. If you don't have Comcast, you don't get the benefit of it. So there are arguments on both sides, certainly. But yes, in general, a town council or a board of selectmen could decide to carve a part of that franchise fee away from the enterprise fund and put it into the general fund. Certainly, that's any town has that option.
Now, I'm assuming that would not be it wouldn't be with police detail, because that goes right back, obviously, to the pay of the police details. Sewer, can that be touched, or is that all used right away?
No, sewer is all user fees.
Right
and again, I mean, there is a slight administrative charge that goes to our finance department for running, for sending out the bills and collecting the bills and then managing the personnel. But no, sewer user fees have to pay for the operation of sewer.
Now, I mean, I'll sit here and I'll say, honestly, I'll get in trouble for mentioning this on the BCTV because I sit on the board. So I'm sure there'll be board members who'll go, what are you doing? You're sitting on BCTV talking about should the town take some of the money. And I mean, I guess to me, no cow is sacred. So if there's funds with BCTV that could be used for the whole town, then, I mean, personally, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I have no idea, how the council feels. I do remember last year, Russ was kind of talking in that direction, Russ Marcoux, and how much he was looking to do, I don't know. But I know it was one of the things that he certainly had simmering in his mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but the reality is it's a controversial issue. There are arguments on both sides because, again, like I said, I think it boils down to should taxpayers benefit from franchise fees that are only paid by subscribers, or should only the subscribers benefit from those fees? And if you say it's only subscribers, is the investment of BCTV what they want to pay for? So there are layers to that question.
Sure, but I mean, I'll play devil's advocate. A lot of us don't benefit from the school system.
Well, right.
And yet we pay most of our tax dollar to the school system. So I mean, it is kind of a.
But society in general benefits, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess my thinking is in tough economic times, you have to look at everything. And if it means somebody gets a little pinch now and then, no, so be it. I mean, we're all getting pinched.
Well, and you are all taxpayers, so you're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, we're all getting pinched. And I mean, I'm a Comcast subscriber, so I know
as am I.
I'm kicking.
And a taxpayer,
exactly.
Yep.
Excuse me, well, that kind of got off on a new tangent. But I was just kind of curious if that was anything anybody was talking about.
No, we haven't talked about it since I've been here. Oh. I mean, I've heard that conversation statewide for years, but I have not had that conversation in Bedford.
Do many towns, do that?
Well, some towns, for instance, New London derived a franchise fee and did not have any public programming. So 100% of the franchise fee, and I think it was 3.5% when I left, went into the general fund as a franchise revenue.
That was what, roughly? I mean, I know you can't remember.
$70,000 roughly.
And there was no public program.
That's correct.
Wow.
That's correct. And in Hanover, it was, I don't remember what the exact division was, but some of it went to the public programming, which was not nearly as extensive as what Bedford has. It's a pretty phenomenal setup with the 3 channels and the public ability to use the system. I mean, it's very advanced here. Hanover did have some live broadcast of Board of Selectmen's meetings, for instance, but not every board used the public access. And so some of that went to the local television, and then some of it went to the general fund. So, I mean, those are just the 3 towns that I've been in. Each one has done it differently. But like I said, it's a conversation statewide and arguments on both sides, like any other fun subject.
And I mean, it may sound like treason on my part. I don't know. I guess I'd say,
That's between you and your board.
well, no, I mean, I guess I'd say that it isn't treason. It means I'm telling it like it is, even though I'm sitting on the board, and this would not be a popular opinion on the board.
You're asking a question.
You know, but I guess to my way of thinking, I mean, this place is pretty well equipped. We have a lot of state-of-the-art stuff. I suppose it depends, you know, where you sit, whether we need all that state-of-the-art stuff. I frankly don't know. But, you know, would I rather see some more equipment here, or would I rather see an extra cop on the payroll? I'd vote for the cop.
Well, and that's, you know, you as a board member and as a taxpayer and as a citizen, I'm glad you're asking those questions. I mean, I think everything can go on the table. You said it.
Hey, but we got to tell it like it is, right? Now, you know, I know you belong to all the professional organizations, and town managers meet all the time and so on. So we had this crazy wild card this year that the legislature said, well, we're going to take some of that pension responsibility and dump it back on the town.
All of it, right?
Yes. And you know, is there anything in the wind, or the town managers talking about? Is there more potential for more of this coming out of state government?
Well, we were all, I think, waiting to see what would happen with the elections.
Yeah.
And depending on who's the majority, that really influences quite a bit how the discussion goes. So when we received the news and the bills, I think it came out, actually, it came out on September 11th, believe it or not. When we received that information, there was a flurry of discussion about, well, what do we do next? I mean, the state has already, part of that not in this year, but in previous years, we've already felt the increase of the state eliminating its share of contributions for police, fire, and teachers. And so the state, as of 2009, paid 35% of the retirement costs of police, fire, and teachers. And then that went down to 25%, and then it went to 0. So that has been felt in previous budgets. That did not impact the rates themselves. That were a separate calculation. So when the rates came down, we had pretty good pension reform in 2000 that went into effect in 2011 that to some extent mitigated some of the damage, but it maybe didn't go far enough. But how much farther do we go, I think we don't know what the answer to that is, and depending on where the legislature stands, we just don't know. I mean, yes. So I can say yes, there's been a lot of conversation among managers that we can't sustain the increases that we've felt, but we also don't know what additional reform can happen that will. The big problem is there's a almost $5 billion unfunded liability in the New Hampshire retirement system.
I know.
So what additional steps can we take that takes into account that employees are vested, that some employees argue that vesting takes place as soon as you're hired. Some say it's 10 years, which is what the law says, and that may be a legal question that remains to be answered. But what further changes can take place that current employees in the system can live with, and that won't affect hiring future employees, and those are all discussions that have to happen.
Well, you know, one of the things that scares me, just looking at state government and all the different issues that came up during the election and such, I mean, obviously they took that and threw it back at the towns, and I think to myself, what else can they possibly throw back at the towns?
Well,
because I mean, we all know that that money is not working out well on the state level. The state departments, their first pitch, to the budget to the governor, was looking for a 19% increase, or $2 billion. And I'm sure that'll get adjusted, but obviously they're all trying to get more money. UNH wants an 89% increase to restore their 100% funding.
Right.
They're talking about lowering the UNH system tuition rates. Well, I mean, somebody has to make up the shortfall. They're already talking about new taxes. I mean, there's a proposal in for a gas tax increase. We've already heard that they will go in for a cigarette tax increase. We've already heard they'd like to restore the $30 auto registration fee.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
And I mean, what else is in the pipeline?
Right.
And when you look at it all, it's like, wow. So I mean, not only do we have to deal with obviously we're going to have an impact on the local end, but what the heck is going to happen to us on the state end?
Well, I think we are, as managers, worried that there is more there is more that could be cut, that comes from the state to the towns.
Yeah.
We lost shared revenue a number of years ago. We've lost the retirement system share. We receive a share of meals and rooms tax. That amount has been fixed, so hopefully that won't go down. But it could be eliminated altogether. And then we also receive a portion of the highway. We receive a highway block grant, which is paid for in part by the gas tax.
True. True.
And that's used to offset our infrastructure
and probably
maintenance
some
costs.
safety grants too, correct?
And
From
then
police
safety
department
grants,
and
which
such,
primarily come through the federal government.
Right, but still.
And those are available to us. In fact, they pay for some of our additional police coverage, and they pay for we have a great renovation of our dispatch center going on right now, which is from a highway safety grant. So those things could come back on the table. I think we're worried about that. But I also think on statewide, we are not able to fund the regulations, the obligations that are in place. I mean, we have to interact regularly with the Department of Environmental Services. We have to interact with the Office of Energy and Planning and the Department of Safety. And so even if the state makes cuts to its own operations and doesn't cut its sharing with us, we may still feel the impact of those cuts. DOT. I mean, the state's infrastructure obligations are unsustainable, and we have a need to have 101 addressed. So will the gas tax pay for that? I don't know. But it is in the 10-year plan, which is underfunded. So if we're going to expect to benefit from that, then we have to somehow expect that.
Isn't it underfunded like by a couple of billion
or
something? It's some ridiculous figure.
Number.
Yeah.
Right. So it all costs money to keep us going.
And I don't know. I think that's what scares people.
I know.
I really do. I think that scares people. One of the things that I should say, and I did take notes, because again, I don't want you getting blamed, for this. I mean, there's
I've got broad shoulders.
Well, I know that, but people are funny, and people get very angry, and they look at the people in power and say your fault, and I don't want that to happen, which is why I wanted to have this conversation today. Well, I mean, seriously, because it's not your fault.
Thank you.
Obviously, I mean, we all know. I mean, there's no way any government, local or whatever, is going to stay flat. I mean, just the cost of everything has gone up. So obviously the cost to just having a town goes up as well. Right. And I did make a lot of notes on the things that you did kind of say, you know what, we're not going to do this year. So if you don't mind, I'm going to say them so that people do understand that Jessie has looked at all these figures and said, you know what, I'd love to do it. I know a lot of people want to do it, but we're not going to do it. I know that you've at this point in time kind of put on the back burner the whole substation, fire station, and Parks and Recreation would like a building. They're off the radar right now. The Route 3 and 101 improvements right now are off. Cemetery expansion, town office building, whether it's to be replaced or renewed or refreshed or whatever has to be done to it. Library parking, some people are screaming for. Software and equipment, more people want. And again, obviously, I'm sure every department head would love to have a couple of more people.
Right.
And you've looked at all the things and you've said that's not going to happen this year.
Right.
And I think people need to know that so that they're not picturing, you sitting in there with the
This
pen
is not
going,
a kitchen sink budget.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you. Well, and some of that is still on the table. One of my promises to the council was to take a good look at our capital improvements plan. And that is the plan. It's required by charter. It's also required by state law for any town that has a master plan. And that requires us to look out 6 to 10 years at our capital needs and plan for it financially, which is responsible government. If we know we've got something coming down the pipe in 6 to 10 years, let's start perhaps putting money away now. And some of those projects that you listed are in the capital improvements plan. Some actually have some funding already in place, some don't. But I wanted to take another look before I put it in the budget. And one of the things we're doing right now is a facility study. The infrastructure bond paid for a study of our facilities, both in terms of structural needs, which luckily we found out that none of our town facilities is in any sort of structural danger.
That's a good thing.
And then the other thing it looked at is space, a space study. Do we have enough room? And I think...
And that's been an issue for a while.
It is, and I think I can generalize and say we have enough room with the exception of storage. If we could recapture some of the space that we've dedicated to storage, we would have some room to move around our staff. And right now we don't have the room to move around our staff because of the amount of paper storage that we have to have. So we need to look at ways of resolving that, whether it's going digital or
but there's cost to
renting
that as well.
a storage space.
Changing everything to digital,
everything has costs, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the fire substation is probably where we're investing most of our time right now as far as studying. We just engaged a consultant, an architect, and a land use consultant to help us identify a site on South River Road, to help us design the building that would meet our needs now and long term, and then to talk about whether there are other needs related to police or public works or storage that we could take advantage of that site. And then I intend fully to bring the entire project back to the council, because I know that there's been discussion since 2005, 2006 when the need was identified to have the substation, but we really are talking about an additional $1 million a year of operating costs. So is that something that the community supports before we're any farther down the road, so to speak? And so, and I've promised, when I denied the fire chief's request to add 3 staff in anticipation, the plan is 3 a year for 3 years to get up to the additional 9 staff we would need to operate that station. My promise to him was, let's work very hard to put the package together, but I don't want to budget until I know what that package looks like. So,
and that to me makes sense. Because again, I mean, it's definitely a want, you know, I mean, but there are a lot of wants, and obviously in tough times, which wants are the ones that are most needed and most necessary,
right, and
some may have to wait a while.
This was identified as a need, and you know, our population on South River Road, both commercially and residentially, has grown even since it was identified as a need. We need to revisit how often our our emergency personnel go to South River Road versus the western side of town. So,
and then you get involved in all the things like time of trip and cost of trip and all those kind of good
response
things too.
And you know, would lives be saved? Would our business community's investment in their infrastructure be saved if we were closer? That's something we still just need to make sure is still relevant.
Sure. One of the things that concerns me, and I do admit to a bias in this because I have a son who's a police officer, not in Bedford, in Massachusetts, but it's several years, I think maybe like 2005, that it was recommended that our police force be increased by 8. Right. And obviously that has not happened.
Right. They've chipped away at some.
A little bit, but no, we're still way short.
Right. Right.
And I know the chief, I think, would like to have had at least 2 added this year, and at least right now, it's not looking good.
That's right. We incrementalism, though. I mean, it's, you know, let's see what the case is for one, and then we can add additional in future years if the council and the voters support that.
Now, let me ask you something. I realize, again, every department has needs. Right. And I'm certainly not dissing town employees at all. Although some of them will hear this show and go, what is she doing to us? But, you know, I mean, again, sure, you know, every department, I'm sure, justifies an increased employee, because they have to justify it. They can't just say, I want to hire 3 people and you're going to go along with it, or the council or the taxpayers.
They have to justify it. They have to convince me, and then we have to convince the council.
Exactly. But is there going to be kind of a priority check? I mean, let's put it this way, and I certainly don't mean this to sound negative to any town department or town employee, but personally, I mean, if you called me up and said, Kathy, it's your decision, tell me what you think. Should we have another cop, or should we have somebody on the planning board? I'm not even going to hesitate. I'm going to say to you, the cop. And I'm going to say it for a lot of reasons, because they've been waiting a long time, because I do believe it's a matter of public safety to the residents, and I do believe it could be a life safety issue for some of our police force. Yeah. So prioritizing, I'd say definitely the cop, let the planning board wait. Is that kind of discussion going to go on?
Oh, I think it will. I absolutely think it will. I would just suggest that I don't think waiting a long time is a good enough argument for adding staff, but I do agree that life safety, I agree that life safety and emergency response are key to a community. So prioritization is, I mean, it's already happened. When I started the budget, I had requests for 9 staff, and that's down to 3.5. So I think public safety is critical, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the growing community. And you know, we do have increased crime, and we have increased drug use,
of the population
and it's
increase
absolutely
and so on.
right. And the proximity to bigger cities and the interstates, and you know, Bedford is not an island, so that certainly is a priority. The
and I mean, when you think of it,
as
like
well.
our population's what, a little over 21,000. During commuting hours, if you were to add all those people, that's probably 4 times that are in the town of Bedford.
Not only that, but we are, you know, we bring in people for our daytime jobs.
That's right.
And it doesn't get necessarily quieter at night either, with our active restaurants and you know, and just domestic issues, and so that's absolutely a priority. On the other hand, our planning department handles a significant number of transactions. They've done that with 2.5 people. They're understaffed. Are we meeting the service? If we want to continue to meet the needs of our developers and our growing business population, are we doing that with our current staff? So it's that's why I love this job. It's just lots of unanswered questions, and maybe unanswerable questions.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I guess I'm looking at it not from the town manager view. I'm looking at it from the Bedford resident, you know, who kind of has an opinion on everything.
That's right.
Like we all do.
And where you stand depends on where you sit,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
What they say?
And you know, I guess if I didn't have as many hours to go to the library, for instance, or if it was a little harder for me to find a parking space, or if I had to wait 10 extra minutes to register my car, as opposed to, do I want to think of maybe not enough cops being out on the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, then I'm going to say the cops out on the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I think that's more important to my safety and your safety. But again, that's my opinion. Whether or not anybody agrees with me, I don't know.
And unfortunately, people don't always know the need until they need it.
That's true.
And that's
true.
You know, that's what's too bad, is that somebody might not know that we're understaffed in the police department until they actually have a need and our officers are tied up somewhere else. Or they may not know that we're understaffed in the planning department until they wonder why something hasn't, you know, is taking longer. So you know, it's all just life experience.
That's true. That's true. You know, we have talked way longer than we ever thought.
You told me it was going to happen, and I didn't believe you.
Because I kind of said, well, let's see where it goes, and because we're us, we can talk a couple more minutes if you want. I did look over, and I definitely want you to come back as this process goes on. In fact, you know what I'm going to do, because I'll say this so people will know what the workshop schedule is, so they can follow things.
Please.
The next one is November 28th.
Correct.
And this show will not air on BCTV by November 28th, but it will be on YouTube by then. And then December 5th is a possible date.
December 5th is now definite.
Oh, it is definite?
Right,
okay.
yes.
December 12th, there will be the council meeting when they'll be talking about it. And then January 9th and January 23rd are the big to-dos. And that's when the council meeting will actually hear public testimony on whatever is the point at that time on the proposed budget.
Right.
And then, of course, March 6th, we all go to town meeting.
Yes.
We'll all see what happens
and then we'll
at that.
know. Right.
So I do want to get those dates out. Okay, so I do hope you all put those dates on your calendar. They're important. Pay attention, particularly if you have concerns or needs, or you want questions answered. You can go to these meetings, you can hear them. And also, we'll have Jessie's email address up there if you want to communicate with her directly, as well as the town website where you can look at these numbers and such yourself. We have gone beyond our time today, believe it or not, so I have to quickly close the show, but we're definitely having Jessie back. She'll be talking about goals, about the budget process as it continues, and we'll have a couple other questions for her too, maybe about things like dog parks and so on. Jessie, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I know your schedule is totally insane these days.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you.
It's time well spent.
We're happy to have you. And certainly the main thing I want people to understand is to not kill the messenger. You're in there and you're breaking your back to do this right.
I am here to to hear whatever people have to say as far as their opinions. So I'm glad to hear it.
Well, you're doing a good job, and
you.
I just want to make sure people understand that, and if they start to get angry, that they don't direct their anger at you, because you're doing the job we need you to do for us.
I'm looking forward to many conversations.
All right, great.
Thanks, Kathy.
Well, thank you. Well, anyway, we're closing now. This was a Tell It Like It Is show. Jessie does a fabulous job at that, and I know that you will want to come back and see her the next time. So until next time, you think about telling it like it is, and thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.